Well, I guess for the folks that this is recording for, hey everyone, welcome to what should be an awesome webinar conversation with two amazing leaders here. We have Jen and Kyle, whose name precedes them. But for some quick intros, Jen is the CEO of GoNimbly. Kyle's the CRO of Owner. And when I was thinking about two people to have to kind of help spearhead the discussion around what we were calling the great RevTech consolidation. You might have seen headlines, just as recent as a couple of days ago with Focus and Apollo. Before that, High Spot Seismic a couple of weeks ago, Showpad and the old Big Tin Can. Before that, Sales Loft Drift Player, just all of these things happening. Thought it would be good to get some minds together, as well as folks that are joining live to share their opinions of what's going on here. These are companies that we've been seeing grow for the last decade or so, kind of all become either PE bought or kind of combined together in some mismatch that you maybe wouldn't have guessed before. And excited to kind of talk about that, especially in the context of not just the companies coming together, but these build versus buy discussions that are going on. So those are some of my thoughts and why I was selfishly excited to have this discussion. But we'll do a mini icebreaker. Maybe we'll have Jen, I'll ask you to go first, and Kyle, do a quick intro of yourself. The questions are going to be, you can take your pick. If you have strong opinions about either, I'm guessing I don't know which one it is, either who's going to win March Madness and why, or what is your least favorite RevTech company out there, and maybe where you're dialing in from as well.
Cool. Sweet. Well, I'm Jen. Like Russ mentioned, I run a RevOps agency called GoNimbly. We were the OG RevOps agency, started using that term in 2016 before it was cool. And other than that, I also own a game company. So I make physical board games with a company called Pillbox Games. So that's been super fun. And I'm in the midst of planning a really big conference that Accord is a sponsor of called RevFest. So that has been my obsession over the last couple of months. And I plan on not sleeping till May 21st. If you're in RevOps, come join us. It's called RevFest. We do it at a nightclub called Elsewhere, which is super fun. Okay, your questions. March Madness. I should care more. I went to UNC. I went to every single game when I was at UNC.
No way.
I
So
used
not
to
Duke.
Yeah, I used to babysit for the head of cardiology at Duke, who would give me his tickets for the Duke UNC
Oh,
game.
epic.
And it
Wow.
was like more fun at Duke because like the stadium is super fun. It's like a high school stadium. You're so close. And I had to pretend I wasn't with UNC. That was the only rule he gave me. And I have no idea what's going on right now. Is UNC still in it?
I don't even know, to be honest. I have a
No.
bracket. I think I'm like
Well, I
the
think
worst.
UNC's still gonna win.
Lowest
That's
points.
my pick.
Okay. Okay. Awesome.
Villanova? Is Villanova in it?
No,
No.
Couldn't tell
also
you.
early exit.
Okay, great. So, I'm out. My bracket's out. RevTech, I do know a lot about. Things I hate. So I start off my career in marketing automation, and I was like a big Eloqua consultant, then Marketo, then HubSpot. I just cannot with Pardot. Like I have a visceral reaction to it. So on RevTech stack, that's the one. And if anyone here is from Salesforce, I'm sorry, Daddy, I still love you. And don't be mad at me. And the other one that I'm having like issues with right now is I was a huge Notion. Like I went all in, the whole company, all of
Hmm.
our documentations in it, so much so that I'm finding it kind of unusable now. It like the search isn't doing anything for me. The fact that it's not structured is breaking things for me, and I'm moving into a little DIY now and rebuilding a lot of it ourselves with Claude and seeing what we can do there.
Very interesting. And Kyle, how about yourself?
So nice to meet everybody. Kyle Norton. I'm the CRO at owner.com. Calling in from Vegas, where I'm attending the International Pizza Expo. We sell to little tiny restaurants. So we're here pitching pizzerias, which is always a blast. Um, Begrudgingly, I have Duke in my bracket, even though
That
I find,
blows.
yeah, I find them insufferable as a program, but they are a powerhouse. So, we're trying to make money here. We're not
Yeah,
trying
fair
to
enough.
stand up
You
for
can
our moral.
exploit them. You can exploit them. That
Yeah,
works.
that's a good way to put it. And the RevTech tool that I'm most frustrated with, we're uh building our own learning management system right now.
Interesting.
So we're probably gonna rip out WorkRamp, which is our LMS, and
Mm.
WorkRamp is actually pretty good. Like
Yeah, we
for
use
an
it.
for an LMS, I think
Yeah.
they all sort of suck and they're slow. And but what you find once you start building some of your own stuff is if a platform doesn't have just like incredibly open APIs, and if you don't have access to every little piece of these
Yeah.
tools, then they're just so much less compelling if you are really like an AI native organization. And so our enablement team vibe coded a new skills matrix experience, and we built like a version of contests and spiffs, basically.
Cool.
So we're like running this March Madness tournament. It's all vibe coded. The scoreboard is all updated live with the brackets and the whatever. And so it's just like, man, like, this is just a UX on
So
pretty
fun.
simple underlying data. So my head of enablement recently was like, hey, we're just gonna rebuild this. The engineering team has said they can sort of support us on the basics and the hosting and maintenance. And so I didn't think that we were gonna actually like
Rad.
churn off of a bunch of SaaS apps, but it's actually happening now
Yeah.
to our own vibe coded stuff, because you can just build anything. You just go into
Yeah.
Claude, be like, I want to do this and this, take this from here, do it in this way, and it just like works out of the box. And if your platform doesn't have that, not gonna
Yeah.
make it.
Totally.
Yeah, we're doing something similar with our kind of staffing flow. And so we're rebuilding our own application that we used to use a mix of Notion plus this is a very niche services a tool called Maven Link that does like
Yep.
staffing and Salesforce, like it's like kind of all connected and ClickUp. And we're just gonna probably like remove the whole Notion piece of it and we're starting to rebuild what Maven Link does. And I have my own feelings about, and I know we're gonna get into this, but like it's great that you have engineering support and folks that are going to do the maintenance piece because I think that's under invested in, and we're already feeling it. I built like a version of CPQ. We have like a quoting
Mhm.
tool, and like we have bugs. Like it's definitely coming up. As soon as we rolled it out to multiple
Mm.
people, it was like my quote got deleted, and like where is it? And this button got moved, and like we're having like it definitely takes from prototype to actually something at scale you can roll out to hundreds of people. It's definitely a it's more work than I expected.
Totally. Well, I definitely want to get into that stuff. Maybe just start though. Like, do we think the big changes and shifts we've seen in the market with the bigger players in the RevTech space because of this? Because it seems a bit early for like, no offense, the early adopters like us in
Yeah,
the room
totally.
driving the, multi-$100 million machines behind some of the companies we mentioned. So like, to start, what do you think has led to in the last 6 months? I mean, let's call it a few $1 billion in venture capital backed, startups and billions of dollars of value, um, basically being sunset in a lot of ways. Like Drift just no longer exists. That was
Mhm.
purchased 18 months ago for
Yeah,
$1.1 billion.
wild.
It's not a product anymore. And a lot of these
Yeah.
companies and mergers are kind of that. So yeah, curious. Maybe Kyle, if you want to kick us off, like what do you think has been leading to just in a few months a bunch of this
Yeah.
stuff happening?
I think it's a bit of a perfect storm, and you can't pinpoint only one thing, but it's multiple trends and factors all converging that I think is driving such rapid action. So you have like a post-ZERP blowout, basically.
Sure.
So SalesLoft, Drift, Outreach did a round at the tippy top. Like a bunch of these companies either got acquired, so the Vista acquiring SalesLoft and Drift was, top of the market. Like SalesLoft, the top. Like the
Literally the top.
timing
Yeah.
They
there
nailed it.
was amazing.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
those guys deserve it so
Yeah.
much. I like just like wonderful people. So like I'm really happy for them. But so these acquisitions and rounds happened at the tippy top of the market, and then there's this big washout, which was probably too much of a pendulum swing the other way.
the whole like profitable, efficient growth movement. Oh, like, growth doesn't matter anymore. You have to be like profitable. That I never bought into.
Yeah, like a $10
But
million company needs to worry about EBITDA and they've raised $25 million. It's like,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not the
And
math.
like you could bootstrap if you want to
Yes, it's
bootstrap your
different than,
business.
yeah.
But yeah, so there's this pendulum swing back, which now puts a bunch of these companies under tremendous pressure because they don't really have a clear path to raise another round because the growth has plateaued, seat count has slowed because, money's not free, and so every software company is not just growing at insane rates.
Mhm.
And so you see this macro pressure as the world is cooling, and then AI is emerging at the exact same time. And even if AI isn't affecting the long tail, like even if it's not sort of a mass majority movement yet, it's
Mhm.
only, fast moving companies that might be vibe coding their own stuff, or, showing a compression on seat count because they're getting that much more efficient. That's only like a tiny fraction of companies,
Yeah.
but everybody can look 6, 12, 24 months into the future and understand where we're heading. We're heading for a world that is, lower seat count, much more efficient, things done with workflows and tools versus people. I don't like to say like agents versus people because I think it's sometimes that's the wrong connotation. But businesses are just getting more efficient, and there is a place where many of these companies will see seat compression, churn, pricing pressure because, like, all right, maybe we don't churn off of WorkRamp, but I'm not going to pay them 80 grand a year. That's for darn
Right.
sure. Um, and so I think this is causing a bunch of the founders, investors, and also private equity buyers to understand this is a moment in time to press in. And so which is why I think you see a lot of this.
Mm.
And the other piece of it is like, so now you have a whole new era of companies that are getting funded at really exciting multiples and are growing at rates we've never seen before. And so you have this massive brain drain in flight to quality. You have a flight to quality with venture capital going to a tiny portion of great companies. And I read somewhere that 70% of all the venture returns have basically been generated by like 5 companies. It's like Anthropic, OpenAI,
Yeah.
who from the last decade. So you have this like flight to quality of capital, flight to quality of good talent. And so you get into the doom loop where you're one of these companies and you can't hire good people because your multiples make no sense. And so the equity doesn't have a path to being very valuable. And so the market is just really squirrely.
Mm. Big agree. I'll add one more perspective. As much as I agree with you that not everybody, especially large companies, are not going to vibe their code their way into internal applications because they're not small applications. If you have a massive team to be able to manage. The move though on vibe coding is I have met with a few founders who have been building their application for a long time and then had a moment of clarity where they were like, fuck, I'm just going to try to vibe code what I did over the weekend. And they did. And then
Yeah.
I think there's a huge fear of like, well, I'm going to get disrupted. But I just spent the last 4 years building this thing in a time when it was really hard to build. And now I'm
Mhm.
seeing that I cannot do that anymore. So I think there's also a lot of companies that will either shut their doors or like not for the best money, but just go fire sell. And so I think we're going to
Like
see a
giving
lot
up.
of,
There's a lot of
yeah,
people giving up. Yeah.
yeah. And honestly, I think it's smart. There's a lot of smart people who are like, you know what? Let me start over. Or like, I need to go after another thing. It's just not worth my time. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of consolidation, in that space. And, I
It
think
is
we're also,
rational.
yeah, it's
Like it's a
rational.
rational decision.
100%.
I agree.
Yeah. And then there's the very cliche, it's either consolidation or specialization that's going to make you money. And we're definitely in the consolidation era. Everybody's building each other's features. I think you mentioned outreach, sales left, Gong. That's a very good example of everybody started to in Clary. It's like
Clary, yeah.
you used to need an outreach, you used to need a Clary, and you used to need a Gong. Then they all built each other's features. Now you got to pick one horse. And so, I think there is a consolidation not only in the market, but also internally for RevOps
Within the
teams. It's like
space. Yeah.
and I think it's good for revenue operators. I have to manage less. I don't need to manage a bunch of integrations and adoption, but it's like happening obviously on both sides because there's consolidation in the market and that's affecting our tech stacks.
It's actually interesting because both are happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost like a SaaS consolidation while there is an AI unbundling, where you see a
100%.
bunch of these AI point solutions
Yeah.
that are like, oh, like we can actually do forecasting that works
Right.
today and is AI native, or we can have AI native email and call products and next best action tooling. And so you're actually seeing like both of these things happen at the same time.
Yep.
And we're having this exact conversation
Yeah.
is like, we want to build stuff ourselves or do best in breed because really cool companies reach out to us. And so like, what is the foundation that you architect around, which I'm
Yep.
sure is going to come up in a couple of minutes here.
Yeah, and we've got a big decision to make on, DIY versus not in this space and building internal teams that can manage that. I as much as I do see a lot of consolidation and then building across, I also think we are in a little bit of an echo chamber of we are in the industries that do this. Some of our customers that are in kind of more old school industries are much more willing to just buy the tech. But I see you mentioned kind of the pendulum swinging, and I felt this 2019, 2020. I think revenue operators were still very much in this. I'm just going to buy a bunch of tools. Money's free. We have these giant tech stacks. And then we got on the other side of money got expensive. And for sure, we started to look at our tech spend. We saw that most of it was shelfware. We were using 10% of every platform. We're a huge Gong customer and partner, and I love them. But I also found a lot of customers that were just recording calls with Gong. For that, that's not what you need. And so there were a lot of folks that just put a ton of scrutiny on their existing, tech stack and just cut and then went maybe a little too lean in some places. I've seen people come back and go get those tools again. And then I also think we might be swinging a little too hard on DIY. Where like you should consolidate on some core platforms. And then to your point, like what is the tech stack we're building on top of? What are the features that we're willing to build and manage and where's the core? Like I'm seeing some SMB small companies trying to rebuild CRM. That's not for everybody. And we have to know where that line is.
Yeah. Well, maybe that brings up, okay, I think a more sophisticated question of like, from your opinions, because obviously, you have the right to change this opinion in a week or two or three as you continue playing around with more stuff and talking to more folks in the space to see what they're doing. But like, what is the right stuff to focus on internally with those resources? So let's say you get two or three, resources, killer folks that are, AI native and amazing builders in the go-to-market, RevOps world. How do you think about prioritizing that, right? Because right, people hate, old school CRM. Is that where we're going to start? Is it, people love the conversational intelligence. Hey, if you don't want to spend a ton of money there, do we build that? Like, same could be said for, what we're building at a core. Like, where would you recommend, based on what you've seen so far, at your own companies as well as others, the most value out of where do we build and where do we just continue to outsource and buy and happily pay the whatever thousands of dollars so we don't have to think about that stuff? So Jen, maybe back to you first and then to Kyle. I'm curious, like, at least for today, what would your recommendations be to someone to think about what to focus on with their own tooling versus, outsource?
Yeah. I would probably go and say that there's two categories where you should build. It's build and buy. It's build and buy.
Yes, that's
We
what I
can
mean. It's
stop
like, but
doing a
where?
versus.
But where's
It's
the
both.
line and what's the
Yeah.
priority? And yeah.
So I think you build at the really easy use cases. So things that can be customized for you that you can manage, essentially workflows. A very easy one is, okay, research before a meeting. Go DIY that. You don't need to go buy an application that does research. In fact, you're better off because it's going to be custom to you and you're going to be able to do that. You know your industry better than any other tooling. You can DIY that. It's a simple button, a couple clay tables, we're good to go. On the other side, in the middle, the core stuff, buy. You are not in the business of building CRMs. You don't need to have a bunch of people trying to figure that out. It's not a competitive advantage where like pre-research can be a competitive advantage. So like I think the core.
So when it relates to your customers and understanding your clients,
sure, that's a
and
great
your own perspective on things. I'm just trying to give people a framework because
totally.
it's like, but why that versus this? So yeah, where your customer understanding can stand out, that's probably a good thing to think about for
For
building
example,
versus
yeah,
what.
I don't like, for example, tools that give you the like an AI email template for you, that they hold the logic of what goes in that email. You need to do that. You need to
Mm,
have your own language in the way that you talk about the problem, and you need to own that logic. So maybe that's like an example.
yeah.
And then I would say like the other gamut is like they can be big, hairy projects that are also a so unique to your business. I heard this is maybe a rumor. I think it's true, but Asana built their own CPQ. They like fully decided to build CPQ. Most businesses are not doing that. This is public knowledge. OpenAI bought a CPQ tool. If they're not DIYing it, there's a reason.
Mhm.
It's not really agentic. It's business rules. It's
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
rules
core.
based. Yeah.
There's no competitive advantage. It's just about like keeping everything in your business safe. And so on that front, I typically don't recommend it. But Asana has such a unique partner network in the way that they sell and quote that most tools were just like not doing it for them. So they DIY'd it and it took them 2 years and they're very happy with the outcome. And so it kind of tells you that there's sort of like the two places. There's sort of the easy, it's like, I should own it. It's logic. I should own it. I can manage it. There's kind of core that you should buy. CRM is a good example. I know a lot of people have DIY conversational intelligence. I probably wouldn't. I think that there's a lot of competitive advantage, or like there's a lot that you can do to lean on a company that really focuses on that. And then, in
And
the
why
other
particularly that? Maybe to double click there, because you
yeah,
could say the same. That could be a good example in my mind of your intelligence. Like, hey,
sure.
isn't the customer conversation the core thing that you should be owning, that
Yeah.
you can come up with the right next steps based off of? But why would that be slightly different? Is that the market's more mature and you don't have to solve that problem because it's kind of a solved problem? Or why would you say that one's
A
and
large amount of data. It's an
you don't
incredibly,
want to have to
you know,
store, that you want to query? But like, wouldn't you pull that
store.
into your own data lake anyway?
Yeah, you 100% could.
Yes.
It's just not like the super easy use case that you can spin up and have the argument I would make on I don't like people using Gong's email templates to go out, for example. I receive those and I know that you didn't write them. And so there's a lot of stuff in there that I would want to DIY on top of it, but I might not rebuild the platform. Like the searchability, the like ability to break down
Compression.
accounts, to search on it. Yeah, if you think about a call, you have to break down everything from like, I don't want to know that on this call we mentioned XYZ. I want to know that Ross said it. So it's just like enough complexity that I wouldn't put a team on it.
Okay. And what about you, Kyle? Any differing thoughts there? Similar framework to how
Similar
you're thinking
thoughts,
about it?
different it's different language. I think that people should be building their own intelligence. So
Yep.
things that are the core intelligence of how you go to market that are extremely differentiated, you want to build. And I think things that are undifferentiated but require stability, reliability, governance, like those are good product categories to buy. Like Salesforce, I've gone from like fairly bearish 2 years ago. I'm like, man, this is the time that Salesforce is finally going to get disrupted. And now I've become a Salesforce bull because actually I think like that's the core centerpiece technology that everything can plug into.
Mm.
And you can just say, okay, like just take all your governance from here. Like what do different roles get access to? What
And
does
you
your
push that to all of this other stuff. So you still need a place to
push it
house
everywhere
the
else?
structure
Mm.
stuff. So it's interesting. So taking a step back from they were trying to be the system of action. I remember even when I started a court, it's like, what do you mean you want reps to do things outside of them? Like, well, they're not doing anything with the customer in it, but there's been this huge mental shift just, in the last few years of no, but the advantage is like the structured data and permission and all the stuff that you're talking about, Kyle, which is
There's
almost
a
like a repositioning of how many people are thinking about the product, right?
Yeah,
there's a reason they're
and
investing in data cloud the most.
yes.
So
Yeah,
you're saying they even see that they're like not giving up, but kind of giving up on like the workflow execution layer and more so, hey, we're happy to be the infrastructure layer for everything that's built on top of it.
well, yes, but they're also coming back to being system of action with a different foundation now.
Yeah.
So if you think about, they bought Momentum, they bought Bluebirds,
Qualified.
they bought Qualified, they bought Informatica, which is an important foundation piece to make all of this work. You can clearly tell that they see this phase change, this platform change, as an opportunity to take a second bite at the sales engagement apple. Many of us have probably piloted or tried those products. They weren't very good. There's a reason that Outreach and Apollo and SalesLoft became, big things. It was a gap that was left there by Salesforce.
Yeah.
Those companies wouldn't have flourished if there wasn't a hole being left by them. But I think with those acquisitions and being able to say, it's like, okay, why not just bring all that into Salesforce and use Agentforce as like a core workflow system? Like maybe not everybody is going to build with Claude Code and ship it to other places. And you have this massive ecosystem of people who know how to build on Salesforce. You can just like retrain them how to use, and the Agentforce experience is easy. It's a little bit limiting, but because it's more drag and drop as opposed to like Claude Code, you're just yapping away and like seeing what emerges. And so I think they have a strong position to make claim there, because those tools, especially because those tools are commodities, like an email sequence, making like clicking dial, having some order of operation, like that's pretty basic stuff now that I think they'll be able to execute on. And what's more interesting now is all of the other stuff. How do you hyper personalize outbound email? How do you give reps the exact right information that they need, not too much, not too little, at the time they make that call or they're on that first disco or demo or whatever? That intelligence layer, we will continue to build. Like we really want to build that intelligence internally and own the context engine, the prompt, all of the prompt chains. The workflows itself could be different places, but like the actual intelligence behind it, like we want a maximum control over. And I find that when a platform tries to do it, it's just nowhere near as sophisticated as you can make it building it yourself.
It's so interesting about like watching Salesforce's moves and trying to figure out what they're trying to do. Because if I were them, like when I first started off my career, I worked at a company called Blue Wolf. They were Salesforce's biggest partner, and we were like just obsessed with Salesforce. It's all we did. And one of the things that we talked a lot about was this concept of like we can't have any swivel chairing. You don't want reps going from one tool to another, from one tool to another. And then I think everybody gave up. Or, that's kind of happening. And
But
now
we're
there's
back now.
yeah, we're back to sort of saying, and I met with a customer of ours yesterday who was just kind of musing about like, hey, do I create basically a like core hub for my sellers to go into that connects with everything, but basically they're interacting. And I do wonder if like Salesforce will move to a place where you kind of show up and everything's interconnected and the UI is completely different. And I just have a system of action and whether or not they'll move that way.
So a different UI than they have today. Because I've seen every company we work with that's upmarket is like, here's the $2 million project that we did 6 months ago that we're still only through 70% of the functionality that we thought we would have that should have been launched 9 months ago, where reps were still struggling to get adoption of. Like that is almost like, basically the gist of every company that's tried to do that. So like I get the theory behind it in terms of the execution of it. I just haven't seen it live in production.
Yeah. I mean, I would say if I'm Salesforce, I'm looking at a tool like Gong and going, oh, the reps are no longer logging into Salesforce. What does that do for us? And when I look at that ecosystem, whether you could argue you should DIY part of it or not, the only thing missing on that experience is quoting. So like if I'm a rep, I'm going in, I'm listening to calls, I'm following up, I'm sending emails, I'm doing my forecast. I just can't quote from Gong. I think that's like kind of the last mile that puts me back into Salesforce. And it wouldn't surprise me if they built something out that maybe sits on top of Salesforce, but allows you to quote.
Like
and
the
then
UI UX layer of it, but instead of having that need to be built into
I don't know why are we going to Salesforce
API
now?
integrate? It could just integrate to the API and just have a page there.
Yeah. I don't know. That would be my advice to a meet. If a meet is on, that's my advice.
Yeah, that and don't charge so much.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they gotta make money.
Yeah, that's why we churned. And we churned to Momentum for call recording, which Salesforce bought.
Right.
And I have a feeling Salesforce is going to get real aggressive about.
Oh, interesting.
Well, yeah, you think about it, like that's a layer that Salesforce, if Salesforce owns, it makes every single other one of their products way better. Like they should have
100%.
everybody in it. My like frustration with Gong a while ago, which was one of the original reasons we moved over to Momentum, is it was too much of a walled garden. And I was like, well, like
Mm,
I want to
I
be able
want to
to
get in there.
I want to be specific about the data that I'm pushing. Like
Yep.
now I think they can write to Salesforce fields. For a long time when it was
Yep.
clearly available, Gong
Right.
wouldn't allow you just write things back to specific Salesforce fields with specific prompts because they
Yep.
wanted you in that experience. But like you want it in your system of record. I
Right.
wanted all that stuff back in Salesforce. And so this I think is one of
Yeah, it's a move towards it.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because every like all of your actions, all of your intelligence, all of your other tools and apps, like everything coming back
Yeah.
is really mission critical.
Yeah, that's super fair. They are. I'm watching one thing there, and this is a dovetail. I won't make this all about Gong, but they're building this uh, new tool called Orchestrate, where you can do workflows inside of Gong and
Hmm.
take Gong out of it. But I do think this is something that's going to happen to operators. Is we have this like workflow automation sprawl. You even said, Kyle, where you're like, hey, I want to build this intelligence layer, and then I don't really care where the workflows live. And I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, it's democratized and everybody's DIYing. And now the issue that we're starting to feel the pain of is how do you manage all
Yeah.
of these workflows that sometimes are opposite of each other?
Yeah.
And now I'm
Some's in
looking
N8N, some's vibe coded, some's in
at
the
Clay
marketing teams
Table,
in Make,
yeah,
Clay,
Gong
yeah.
automation, a Salesforce
Yeah, but won't
flow.
your agents just talk to your agents about figuring
Right.
out how to? I mean, that's
Yeah.
half mockingly of like it's not how it works though. Like
Yeah.
you do store data in some places. You have other workflow builders. You need a consistent way of
Yep.
routing all of these things.
Totally. And it's a dumb example, but I go into an account and all of a sudden my account, type went from prospect to customer. And I'm like, why? Like, and how
Mm,
did that get updated? And now I usually would just go look in a Salesforce flow and feel like, okay, there it is. But
yeah.
now I don't know where to look. And, you can track a field, but half the time your integration user is an actual person.
Yeah.
Now that like you're connecting. So now it looks like Kyle updated and you're going to be like, I didn't do
But
that.
obviously, it was the system on his behalf updating the record, and you don't know
Yeah.
why that triggered. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, which is a little bit of what you were saying, Kyle, which is like, do you lean on Salesforce permissions and profiles and roles? Because right now, I'm also seeing like there's definitely we talk about like data breaches and security, and people are imagining that what that looks like is, oh, you gave it to an OpenAI chatbot and it got leaked. That's not the actual risk. The
Yeah.
actual risk is that you created I don't know, you used Glean or Dust or something, you created an agent, and that user has access to everything. I actually saw this. We did not build it, but I actually saw this where you were talking to an agent that was connected to Gong, had access to all calls, and it was giving you summaries of calls you didn't have access to. So I
Hmm.
could go in and be like,
Oh,
give me
because
a
it had
summary.
access to it, but you didn't. So from a okay, yes, it's
Yeah, give
actually
me a summary
breaking
of
the.
all of Ross's investor conversations, and I can go get that insight. But you had them marked as private, but it was an admin user, and ta-da.
Yeah,
And that's like something when you give operators who I'm an operator, but I'm not a product builder. And it's
Hmm.
going to be a huge like growing up that revenue operators have to do if we're going to be building products because we have not been
but
in
should that be your
practice.
job? Like, should that be like that's when you think about the core
Yeah.
function of the revenue team? And yes, maybe there's a moment where products and bigger companies or startups haven't caught up to
Hmm.
this new technology, and there's a lot of early adopters out there and technologists who are at smaller companies or even faster moving larger companies that can plug that gap. But like, what is the ideal solution? Is the ideal solution that everyone is building the same thing and then plugging in their intelligence, or is the ideal thing you're giving people flexible workflow based tools where they can, like Kyle said, have their own perspective
Hmm.
and lens on a market or on a process, or your example, Jen, with Asana, and there's some things that you can build, but like, should there be a generally acceptable um, you know partners out there to help with these things? And then what you should be really good at, in my strong opinion, is what you should be really good at is understanding your clients and owning that intelligence and having a way of engaging with your customers. That's go to market. And I think everyone wants to be like, are you a product person or are you trying to drive revenue? And what's the thing that you should be spending all of your time thinking about? And how do you
I mean,
balance those two things?
if you want the benefits and the massive leverage from AI, you need to make the requisite uh, investments in getting the foundation right so you don't blow a bunch of stuff up. Because the amount of like YOLO API tokens floating around in like people's Claude code, vibe coded stuff is really significant. And there needs to be some control layer. There's a bunch of startups now playing in this space, trying to be sort of like agent permission and governance and management.
Smart.
But that's product. Those decisions aren't technology decisions in my mind. Those are smart product decisions. Yes, part of it is that, and
But
part
you
of it
need
is the
that in your team
infrastructure.
now. Like your RevOps organization,
But to
some
what
part
extent? Yes. But like, what extent are we talking? Like, what are you going to be really good at as a revenue organization? Are you going to be really good at getting your customers' attentions, guiding them through a buying experience, onboarding them successfully, renewing and expanding? Or are you going to get really good at how permissioning and governance and where buttons go to drive adoption of technology? To me, those are like, there's the understanding stuff that you're saying is like knowing how these tools work, but then there's building stuff. Like I can work at Stripe for 5 years and really understand APIs and webhooks and all that kind of stuff, and I cannot build it.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, what's the line? Are you going to work with people who are going to build it, or is every company out there going to have multiple people who are incredible builders and maintainers of these systems?
Yeah.
That's the big question.
We don't know, but
like
yeah.
that you're talking about the friction. Like that's like exactly the space that we're all
And if you
living
do
in.
one thing, then why not do other things? But then as soon as you start doing these 5 things and you have your content management system and your LMS and the call intelligence and this thing, now you're stuck maintaining these 4 things. Your company grows, you have more needs. Fuck, I wish I was spending $150,000 on each of these things and had a 70% as good product.
Yeah. I mean, I think companies that want to be on the forefront will need these roles within their GTM tech organizations. Like at Ross held like a small CRO summit last week, and one of the guys there who runs global GTM ops at uh, like at GoToMeeting, has like a big product team within the GTM tech org to make these decisions and do the planning and be smart about it, because it is required, or else you will hit a wall and you will make mistakes and you will delete half your database and like send yourself off a cliff. And so I think that this is just the nature of the beast that we're moving into. It is sort of like the on-prem era all over again a little bit. You're like managing and hosting some of your own things, and there'll be tooling that helps you with it, I'm sure. Like there's a bunch of YC companies and companies that have reached out to me because they know we're doing a bunch in the space, and I'm sure the tech will help, but somebody on the team you need the GTM tech architecture experience earlier, because these roles all exist in big companies. The
100%.
company that is like not RevOps, but they are business systems. They're not like building workflows and rep stuff, but managing GTM architecture and data flows and secure. Like those are roles that exist in bigger companies always. And that I think those roles are just going to come earlier stage and be a slightly different shape, but will need to be there if you really want to be on the forefront and get the max impact of all the exciting AI possibilities.
Yeah, we work primarily with mid-market to enterprise companies, and everybody's got a RevOps team and a business systems team.
Business systems, yeah.
And they have very different goals.
Very.
And I do think, look, to your point, Ross, I agree with you. I think we're going to see companies get to a point going, whoops, shouldn't have built that. Not worth it anymore. I do think
we have 3 people that each cost whatever per year, but the alternative thing was this, and we were like, we could build that, and now you have this sunk cost. And again, going back to the product decisions, I think there's a difference between technology and business systems decisions, and like there's just this gap in the market clearly where there's things that people want to do that they can't with the current vendor landscape today. And so it's a really interesting
to
time.
double down in. Yeah. Yeah.
There-
Go ahead, Kyle.
I was just gonna say that there's a question that's related to this in the chat. Like,
Mm.
is the answer really build versus buy, or is it build the platform, buy the last mile? How should we be thinking about platforms like Retool or Lovable as the middle ground? And so it's similar to what I was saying. Like, I think you should build your own intelligence because that intelligence is usable across many, many different surfaces. Like, you don't want your core positioning intelligence in one platform that is disconnected from others. You don't want your core.
Which those companies were trying to. That was the strategy. AI came out and they're like, we're going to have the best intelligence for sending mass emails. We're going to have the best intelligence for call centers. What Kyle and people clearly wanted was they wanted to impact that stuff. They wanted to say, I can help you have better outcomes of this. That make your product more valuable. I can't do that, so I need to do something different. And it feels like there's this forcing function right now of, unfortunately, if you're one of these companies and workflow companies, like let's maybe use the example. I think you brought this up the other day, Kyle, where like the email sending stuff. I think you said, maybe it was Stevie, was like, I don't want to rebuild the architecture and workflows of email, flows,
Sending,
but I want to power the intelligence of that stuff. 100%. And unfortunately, the companies wanted to own that as a product. They were like, this is the coolest product.
Yeah.
We don't want to just be the workflow. We want to be we come up with the smartest thing to say to drive an outcome, which is driving pipeline. I just don't think that's where the world's moving. I think it's the opposite, is lower value, the standard technology that integrates super well with all the intelligence. And I think people are pushing back and like, the strategy teams, those companies, like, that doesn't sound like we're as valuable as a company as we could have been. But that kind of seems like where the world is going. And like, good luck fighting the market. The market is the most powerful thing. So,
yeah,
I agree.
I do think, I've been saying this, RevOps teams are new, right? Like, we have not existed for very long. I do think that we need to look up to product teams and especially now adopt a lot of the things that they do really well. I mean, you wouldn't trust the product team without a roadmap. A lot of RevOps teams out there without a roadmap. And even the way that they document features and the way that they enable their users and the way that they obsess with that workflow. Like I've always said that like RevOps at the end of the day is a product team. We're just building a product for our internal team and we're building it on top of Salesforce and Gong and HubSpot and Marketo and whatever else. Now that stack is changing, but our goal should still be the same. It should be rooted, like there's the strategic part of like an advisor to the CRO part of RevOps. But if I think about the tech and process part of RevOps, we need to, obsess with getting close to our customer, which is the seller, for example, understanding their workflow, solving their problems, and creating go-to-market efficiency. Like that's ultimately what we need to do. Can we increase the carry capacity of the team? Can we do that by increasing conversion at top of funnel or XYZ here? Can I make the quoting experience so good that people give less discounts and fuck things up less so that I can close these deals faster? And like our tech stack is changing and the way that we build is changing. Like our team's using Claude to build in Salesforce. So like they're in there talking to Claude and saying, hey, build me these objects in these fields. When I started, I would open up a bottle of wine and build 4,800 fields over 7 days because we were doing a Salesforce deployment one by one. Like there's also sort of a RevOps teams. Like I don't know how to have junior people on RevOps teams anymore. Like that is also lifting. Like I need more senior folks.
It's product decisions. I think it goes back to like, you need to gain these competencies and like what's going to happen in the meantime where, again, the vendor technologies aren't there. We know we can build this stuff ourselves. We start doing this stuff moving really fast and say, oh my God, I don't have to spend 5 hours on this thing. But now all of a sudden you have
another job. I have a different job now.
You have a totally different job. And maybe you've made a bunch of those mistakes because we don't have that intuition yet because we've been, focusing on business system stuff versus.
Yeah. It's not often we think about stability and uptime in RevOps. Like we just don't talk about uptime. And, I even internally, I told you guys we built a quoting tool.
Yeah.
It was like inaccessible at one point. Everybody's freaking out. And like we just
everyone knows it builds a product is when you ship something that's 10%. You ship a new product, you ship a new feature, you ship a new whole thing. You just started it. Now we have to iterate. Now we have to maintain it. Now we know we got a bunch of things wrong. Is that the same mindset? And do we have those things resourced the same way versus we got something out that looks 90% like the thing that we had before?
The I think a macro point here is the RevOps team of the future needs to look really different
Hmm.
than it does today. And it's not about building tools and writing custom fields and simple workflows. The possibilities are so much greater now that RevOps teams can impact because they can build tooling themselves. They can deploy at a vastly different rate. Like we do the same thing as Jen. We've got a a product that we built called Cerebro that can in Claude do all of the building to push into Salesforce objects, workflows, whatever, into Sandbox. You go do the UAT, and then you can push that straight into production, therefore compressing the time it takes to build
Yeah,
and ship RevOps roadmap by like over 2x more.
for
Like
sure.
I I bet my RevOps leader would say the simple stuff moves at like 4 or 5x the pace now
Yeah.
because you're not doing clicks. You're just
Yeah.
literally shaping and it can pull Cerebro can pull conversations out of Slack. We use Agile, so structure that
Into
into
stories.
the story with the questions that we need answered to follow up on. The RevOps individual can answer those things, and then it can start shaping actually like how to write that into
Yeah.
Salesforce. And if your RevOps team is not building these capabilities and really pushing what is possible, you will absolutely get left behind. And yeah, you can use really smart consulting. Jen's team's clearly pretty cracked and is on the forefront of
Very.
it, but like you still need these capabilities in-house because it,
Agreed.
it is like sort of core to you being able to build a highly efficient go-to-market machine.
Yep.
And the, you know, to really drive the point home, the difference between a company that is like AI native and how it's building its GTM tech and one that is not is like really existential.
Mm.
And if you look at the like differences in efficiency between us and like our startup competitors, that gap, like we are three on a per rep basis, 3 to 4 times more efficient than our direct like contemporaries. And so that means that every rep is producing 4 times the ARR at the same cost. And that means all of that money goes back into brand marketing and organic and product and so you get this compounding advantage where that efficiency becomes a competitive weapon, and that has been a
Mm.
big slingshot for us in our market. So if you don't have the RevOps leader, the type of RevOps leader that I'm talking about, like you need to go get them,
Yeah.
or you need to push that person and make sure that they know that it is existential for them to learn these new capabilities, or else like they can't be in the role anymore. And this goes for people like me. Like you cannot hold on to this role now for much longer without understanding how all this stuff works, because the competitor that does will lap you, because the leverage provided by AI is not 20%, it's not 40% like good RevTech tools might have been. It's like 2, 3x in terms of outcomes.
Kyle, this is like what I'm kicking off our RevOps conference with. Is that like it's changing. Like they're the whatever RevOps team you have today, like that's not what it needs to look like.
Yeah.
And I think again, we're in this. I think we speak to a lot of people at the forefront of this, and it feels like it's changing. It isn't for most. Like
Yeah.
whenever I go into essentially, if you are a company that sells technology to other SaaS companies, you're typically ahead of the curve. If you take that out and you speak to a company that is, I don't know, in the manufacturing space, it is just wild how it's just hasn't changed.
No, it's
And
no difference, impact whatsoever. Maybe you've played
yeah,
around on some stuff on ChatGPT. That's about as
yeah.
far as you've gone. Yeah.
I had a friend of mine who spoke at a conference for, I think it was like medical, something medical tech. So it's still technology, like healthcare technology, and asked the crowd of like a couple hundred people who knew what vibe coding was. And it was a handful of people that raised their hands.
Wow.
So like if you look at charts, the percentage of people that are actually using AI beyond ChatGPT is really, really low. And so I'm hoping to like this is the reason I say that is not because you shouldn't do it. It's not like, oh, it's only a few people. It's that it's such a competitive advantage if you do it. Like if you run at this, you win. And you can have RevOps truly be a like revenue producing function if you kind of nail this mindset.
Maybe closing thoughts the last few minutes, because my mindset is more on like the customer engagement. Like I come from being
Sure.
seller, sales leader, building a cord to like up level the sales onboarding, post sales engagements. How does this stuff translate to the revenue generating activities? So like when reps suddenly have more time,
Right.
when they have more intelligence about, do we know how to use that information? Like forget the providing all of this stuff, right? Like we're talking about the materials and resources for the team to go out and have these conversations, right? The revenue tech folks are building, right? Who are the end users? It's the field, it's the A's, it's the SEs, it's the CSMs, the AMs, the managers. How are they becoming 3 to 4 or 5 times more efficient? And how's your business getting better? Do they know how to use all of this stuff? Are they? Why can now you double their quota capacity? I'm curious, and maybe Jen and Kyle, like what are the outcomes from this intelligence and information and workflows that you're seeing on the field?
Jen, why don't you go?
I mean, you kind of answered your own question, Ross. It's like, yeah, we are giving them more time to do, it's I don't know, I forget what
But
percentage.
using that valuably, I don't know if
Is
I
that
saw
valuable?
if I saw a
Yeah,
team
it's
if I saw a
valuable.
team of 10 people,
Yeah.
they know what to do with the time that's allotted. Now that I have, let's say, 50% more time, am I going to use that 50% as valuably as I use the first 50%? Is it
Yeah.
is it linear or is it diminishing?
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that other than I think why go-to-market enablement is going to have a much better time than they have in the past. I think that it's their time to shine to actually elevate. Okay, great, you have more time. What are you doing to make reps actually folks that are helping their customers maneuver through a really complex problem? How are you making them industry experts? How are you like are they traveling more? Like show up on site. I promise you'll sell more. I promise you the conversion rate increases because if I'm giving you, I don't know, I think it's something like 70% of AEs are only spending 30% with customers. Like I think that's a thesis, right? It's a thesis to say if I get that to 70%, I make more money. I
just put that out there
deals.
because I do think the job of the sellers and the field and leadership changes, it has to, as you get this resourcing, as soon as you get time back, as soon as you get this insight, I am not wildly confident that the market would instantly know what to do with that. I think you need a whole like re-architecting of our engagement model with customers. And like you're saying, hey, do we have more field sellers? Are we more up market because we have this more sophisticated approach? Or do we automate this? Like there's just a totally different like downstream thing to even garner the impact that we just, invested in from the RevOps stuff. Yeah.
Well, let me make this a little more tangible. And I think in BDR, it is the most, it's the easiest to see how you go from like tech to dollars.
Yes.
Yep.
So one of the things that we built is AI pre-call research. And so we've got an applied AI team. This is all built by our guy, YG. And so it scrapes like everything you can find on the internet about a restaurant and synthesizes it to the most important things. And so we have all of this information that sits in Snowflake. Some of it gets pushed to Salesforce, but then for the AI PCR, we just give them the top 3 things that they need to have a really effective cold call. So what's the name of the customer that is closest in geographic proximity to the prospect? What's the thing that is most broken about their current infrastructure and how do we fix it? And then some like hypothesis of need. And so there's like 3 things that they can fit into their cold call script, which is very structured.
Yeah.
And so essentially we said to the pilot team, hey, like I know you like to open a lead, look at it, open the website, like take a quick scan, but for the purposes of this experiment, we're going to give you those 3 things and you're not allowed to click any buttons. You just have to call over and over because, one of the big things that we push is ride-alongs. RevOps, applied AI, enablement. They all have to ride along with reps and sit in the office beside them and watch them work to really like close that distance to frontline.
Mhm.
And so we said, hey, you can't open anything. You just have to dial and dial and dial and just say the thing. And if the thing doesn't work, we'll fix the thing, but like just trust it and go with it.
Yeah.
And so that experiment led to an 87% increase in calls because you took the 2 to 3 minutes in between calls where somebody would open something up and scan it and get distracted to now just compress that time to like nothing, just read AI PCR, dial, and talk. And so our outbound engine between AI PCR and we built this like estimated connect rate so we can tell what leads are going to pick up and what leads aren't, and we route based on that logic, which more than doubled our decision maker connect rates. If you stack all these things up, you take an XDR team who was booking like let's use not real numbers, but if they were booking like 1 or 2 meetings a day, now it's like 3 to 4 meetings a day.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is like, so we have actually more than doubled pipeline for a bunch of these outbound reps just with these few AI tools that we've built. And that is extremely meaningful. That is just like money straight into your ARR number.
Yeah.
Then we do the same thing with AE, same thing with the handoff from AE to launch. We call it Project X-ray, and you just have to manage the business process tightly. If you just say, "Oh, like we're going to do a bunch of this work for you, go figure out what you want to do with this time,"
Well,
maybe the
what
reps.
I find is people building those things, but they're not as specific and prescriptive as you're being. So, like, I feel like 90% of the use cases, I built this thing to do this thing with. They're not using it, or only our top
Change
reps are using
management.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a whole hour-long webinar. I have like a bunch of content on this that I've been presenting at in different places, but like the building the tech is a big part of it. At least 50% of it is how do you drive the enablement. And so that's the ride-alongs, that's building the enablement content, that's
That's the producting in mind.
piloting.
The things you're describing is like what a great product team does and a startup
Yeah.
does to build the right products, and what percentage of companies are going to have the capacity to do that.
The good ones, the ones that want to be successful. Yeah, like I think that's
Well,
the
and scale
requirement.
matters too, right? Like you guys, like even if you're doing the ride-alongs, like your guys' scale and the leveling and the layering of you guys as a company is wildly different than like
Yeah.
we
I mean,
have that team in every different region.
you save an hour, a day and you have one rep. I don't know, are you making that much more impact with five? You've got 100 people. That's, and you can watch it a lot more. Kyle, the same thing that you did, Snowflake did for outbound messages, and they got their reply rate from 1% to 5%. It turns out the robot does it better.
Transformational.
The robot does it better,
Yeah.
and they still decide to have the rep, like the SDR still presses send. It like they add someone to an outreach sequence, it does a bunch of work, brings back the email, and they press send. Whether or not they'll decide to automate it later, I don't know. They did catch a couple fun things. One of them did research and came back, and this wasn't sent. This is like in QA, and it was like, "Hey Kyle, hope you're having a great day. I hope the SEC investigation is going well." And it's like it'll catch stuff like that. Oh, did I freeze for a sec?
No, we got
No,
you.
you're
You got me. So it will like they managed to get like a bazillion more meetings. Intercom also did it with product data. And this is a shift, I think, and I know I'm looking at time, but there's a shift that in lead scoring and prioritizing who you're going out, where I think the days of like 0 to 100, call everybody 80 and up are gone. It's much more use case focused. So like Intercom, they're very smart. I wish I could take credit for this one, but they looked at their customers who had an increasing number of cases. They're a customer support platform and an increasing number of reps, but the NPS score for their customers were going down. So I can email you and be like, "Hey Kyle, your team's blowing up, your team's growing, you have a lot more customers, but your customers are feeling that pain. Can we talk about Fin AI and how I can automate that case management?" Like that is like the amount of pipeline that they created overnight with that campaign was wild because they really understood their customer and they used their data that only they have to kind of book that next meeting. And it's, I think one of the reasons why the Fin product is doing so well is because they really targeted and understood their customers and had a lot of playbooks for how to book those meetings and how to expand.
And the guy who runs RevOps there, Tyler Will,
Yeah.
is AI
Incredible.
native, extremely on the cutting
100%.
edge, has rebuilt a bunch of this stuff. That is the foundational requirement. If you don't have the right leader in place, you don't get any of
Yep.
this cool stuff.
Yeah.
You don't get those like, super compelling email flows and like efficiency outcomes. You need to go push for it.
Yeah.
I think this is the perfect real life examples to end on and play well with kind of everything we were talking about, which is like, what's your competitive advantage in this world? It's not just building everything. It's like, how do we really understand our customers, right? We understood that arrangement of signals that we got from product or conversations, and Kyle, your example, right? Like, we know what we need best to feed our sellers. There's no vendor that's going to build the best overall model and going to be able to do that without your input. And there seems like there needs to be a big mix of this build and buy.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to go on. And I think I've seen people fight it, right? There's big companies that are fighting. They want to own that model. They want to have the intelligence click their button and their recommendation without any input. And I think that's really changing quickly. But appreciate everyone joining, either live or watching the recording. And and Jen and Kyle sharing your thoughts here. This is a lot of fun.